Cybersecurity is an active process. Even if we have a well-designed network and have firewalls, IDSs and so on in exactly the right place, we must still be vigilant and look for evidence we're being attacked. In this discussion, we're going to talk about vulnerabilities and threats. I will show you a video of a high school student creating malware using poison ivy, and it is shocking to see how little work is needed to infiltrate and take complete control over a network device. In response, we must develop policies to mitigate the risk. We must ensure our systems are secure, especially from web-based attacks such as SQL injection and cross-site scripting. If we take a security-first approach, the systems we develop should be designed according to principles that ensure security. The Bell-LaPadula model is one example of how data confidentiality can be guaranteed in our system design. Finally, we will look at the role of passwords as the first line of defense. But what is a good password? You may be surprised to learn we should be using passphrases, not passwords. But in the end, since we're all connected, we can still get hacked if an organization we are connected to has poor security policies. But that's the world we live in. Ready? As we monitor our network, we must be aware of the range of attacks the organization might face, from very technical exploits to social engineering, and from theft to simply causing trouble. Remote root compromise means the hacker has been able to take control of the device at the administrator level and can turn properties of the operating systems on or off. This is a nightmare for any organization because it means the hacker has complete control over that device. To get into the device, hackers may try and guess or crack passwords, often using a dictionary of commonly used passwords. The intent of the hacker could range from defacing the homepage of the organization. This was done recently to Sony for releasing a movie that disparaged the leader of North Korea. Or it could be the intent is to steal data to sell on the dark web. Low-level attacks include packet sniffing, which means capturing packets as they are broadcast over the network. From these, we can see who is on the network and might be able to capture login information and steal passwords that way. Packet sniffing is a particular problem for wireless networks, where the signals are broadcast beyond the walls of the organization and can be picked up by anyone nearby. But we mustn't forget social engineering techniques, where hackers might steal money directly by pretending to be the CEO. Sending an email, for instance, to the purchasing department ordering them to pay an invoice or expenses that don't actually exist. We must also take care of the simple problems, such as someone taking a break and leaving their computer on. If there is sensitive information on the screen, it can be seen by anyone passing by. Each of these types of attack require a different response, from analysis of who is connecting to our network to training people not to click on suspicious links, pay invoices without checking, or leave the computer unattended. The role of the cybersecurity analyst, therefore, is to recognize the potential flaws in a business process, the type of action that might exploit that flaw, and the consequences of that failure. That brings us to the definition of two key terms: vulnerability, the way in which something can fail, and threat, an action that exploits the vulnerability. The National Institute of Science and Technology, or NIST, describes vulnerability as weakness, which they also define as deficiency, in an information system, system security procedure, internal controls, or implementation that could be exploited or triggered by a threat source. So it's a flaw that could lead to damage in our data or systems. A threat, on the other hand, is defined as any circumstance or event with the potential to adversely impact organizational operations, those are assets or individuals, via unauthorized access, destruction, disclosure, modification of information, and or denial of service. In other words, some action, whether intentional or not, that impacts the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of our data or systems. Remember the CIA triad? As a simple example, computers are electrical devices. Electrical devices don't like water, so water damage is a vulnerability. The threat would be water getting into the device, and we mitigate the threat by keeping the computers, let's say, away from open windows, cover them in protective layers if they are mobile, such as a laptop or phone, and also we may have a trip that shuts off the power if water is detected. We would need to go through this thought process for each serious vulnerability or threat. But if there are so many different types of vulnerabilities and threats, how can we mitigate them all? The short answer is you can't. There are too many. But what you can do is assess the important and most likely and put policies in place to mitigate those particular risks. The source of a threat, such as an email attachment, phishing, and social engineering, is called a threat vector. And if we think about an organization, we can think of these threats in terms of originating from three broad categories: hardware, software, and people. Hardware hacks include scanning ports to see if the server will respond to certain requests, to fuzzing random data to see if a weird combination of commands will make the server fall over and become open to exploitation. Software hacks look for holes in the way the software operates, such as accepting commands it shouldn't. People exploits include social engineering and the power of asking someone to please help me. We can also now see the broad spectrum of issues that face cybersecurity, from the very technical issues related to understanding how the hardware and some of the software hacks work, to the purely human aspects, from misusing software in ways the developers never thought of, to people just being people and not doing what they should. So what does a typical hack look like? Well, imagine we are working for New York State Bank. The main office is a 5-story building containing all our corporate systems. As cybersecurity consultants, we may ask the IT department to show us their network diagram, and they may show us something like this. Hopefully you'll agree it's poorly structured. The core layer appears to be the router at the top connecting to the internet, with a wireless router off to the left and a web server in a DMZ off to the right. The distribution layer seems to be the two switches in the middle, but there are no interconnections that would support redundancy in the event of one of the switches going down. But if we accept this is how things are set up, how would a hacker get into our network? The first part of the attack would be to determine the IP address associated with the organization. This connects to the main public-facing devices, which includes the wireless router and web server. If we are hacking remotely, the wireless router won't be a target because we couldn't pick up the signal. We would then scan the IP addresses associated with the servers and scan ports of any device we detect to see what vulnerabilities they may have. Let's say our target is here, the device that contains all the customer data. To get from the router to this point, we need to survey the network, trying to find more devices on the network and the role they play, the routers, the servers, the personal computers, and so on. By testing which version of Apache this server is running, we might be able to take over that server, or we might send a phishing email to hack into this computer. Either way, we now have user credentials and can start observing who is talking to whom, the names of people, and who is the person responsible for customer data. Spear phishing that person with the credentials of the first person we hacked, and bingo, we're in. We can then send the data to our own server, check logs to scrub evidence we were even there, and the hack is complete. Notice how we use exploits on hardware, software, and people, testing the router, exploiting the software running on the server, or spear phishing the people. These are the areas that need to be addressed in cybersecurity. We can identify a hacker or group of hackers by the tactics, techniques, and procedures being used. In the same way that you have a style of writing, hackers tend to use particular tools and methods in their hack. The first step, however, doesn't need to involve any investigation of the corporate network, but might simply involve looking up publicly available information, such as the name of executives within the organization and announcements of events that might be used to frame a phishing email, such as, "Click here for the latest news on our proposed merger with ABC Company." We just need one person to click on the email and we're in. The standard attack procedure, sometimes called the kill chain, is to gain initial access, find users with high level and preferably administrator privileges, survey the network to work out where the digital assets are located, making sure of course we have backdoors to maintain our access, before actually stealing the data. Stealing the data is called exfiltration. And to complete a well-executed hack, doctor network logs to remove any evidence that we were there. When the hack is developed over months using the latest tools and exploits, we call this an advanced persistent threat. To be an APT, it must be clear the hack took patience, using tools or techniques that suggest the hackers are working in a well-funded, possibly state-sponsored group. APTs were first identified by RSA in 2011. RSA is a cryptography company responsible for one of the most widely used encryption standards available today, called RSA. The hackers stole the encryption keys that would unlock any data encrypted using the RSA algorithm. Few companies release reports of how they were hacked, but RSA did, and the report includes this wonderful representation of what they called the first APT hack. From left to right, this is the kill chain. Access was initially gained in step 1 through a phishing attack using a zero-day exploit. A zero-day exploit means it exploits a previously unknown vulnerability. Once in, the hackers used poison ivy in step 2 to maintain access while they surveyed the network over a period of months. Finding users with high-level rights in step 3 and hacking their accounts was the next step. This is called moving laterally, as they jump from user account to user account until they find the person that has access to their target asset, the data they're looking to steal. In step 4, the hackers found the data and started to create pieces so as not to raise alarms. And in step 5, the data is sent using FTP to an account on some unsuspecting ISP. Notice, however, the diagram is not complete. There is no mention of surveying the network, where the hackers understand the layout and who does what within the organization, or of the hackers doctoring the network logs to cover their tracks. But following most kill chains, we can assume the surveying is part of the months of patience that defines the persistent part of APT, and likely to be carried out in step 3, while doctoring the network logs is possibly carried out at all points of the hack, including the end, step 5. Would you like to see the phishing email that caused all this to happen? F-Secure is a company that does analysis of computer hacks, and in analyzing the RS hack, they released a video of the phishing email used. It appears the email was correctly sent to the spam folder of the user, but the user for some reason retrieved it and opened it, possibly because it appeared to be about recruitment plans for the company, which means it might contain a list of people to be hired or fired. Clever, huh? It's also clever how the exploit doesn't appear to do anything. The email contains a spreadsheet, and if the user opens it, there is a little X in cell A1, but the spreadsheet just appears to crash and close down. But that X is actually an Adobe Flash file, and in the time the spreadsheet appears to hang and close, the malware is being downloaded onto the victim's computer. Let's see it in action. When the spreadsheet opens, look for cell A1. And that's it. But in that moment, RSA was hacked and would eventually have their encryption keys stolen. The tool used by the hackers to maintain access in step 2 was poison ivy. In the next slide, I have a video from a teenager showing you how to create your own malware using poison ivy, and the level of control it gives over the compromised machine. But he does jump around a bit, so I'm going to explain what he's doing here so you can follow the video better. We begin with the hacker in one location and the target machine in another. The first step is to open a port to receive the communication from the victim computer. In this case, he opens port 3460 to receive incoming TCP and UDP traffic. Next, to avoid being traced, The hacker uses a service called dynamic DNS, which allows IP addresses to be rerouted from one IP address to another, thus hiding the true IP address of the hacker. Sites like NoIP and DinDNS provide this service. The hacker creates a host on NoIP called Little Smoky and links that back to his machine and port 3460. He now creates his malware, a remote access Trojan or RAT, remote access because he is accessing a device remotely over the network, and Trojan because a link or backdoor is opened, giving the hacker complete control of the computer. Common rats include Poison Ivy and Dark Comet. Be careful you go online to investigate these tools, because they themselves can be compromised. Starting up Poison Ivy, he defines the name of the server that will be installed on the victim's computer, here called noob. When it runs, it will display the process name WinZNC, which makes it look like a Windows utility. A random key is assigned to the application to allow it to run, and the malware will be created with the file name winznc.exe. To prevent the malware from being detected by antivirus programs, the hacker runs a program through a FUD crypter, where FUD stands for fully undetectable. Example FUD cryptors include Obsidian, which the hacker uses, and CypherX. These cryptors mix the code, adding irrelevant parts and separating crucial lines, so the antivirus will not recognize any malware signature. Scary, huh? Once randomized, the malware is ready to go. It's sent as an email attachment, and once downloaded on the victim's computer, it runs as a process called WinZNC, linking back to the no IP address, which of course is forwarded to the hacker's real IP address. The hacker will now see noob running on that port and can access the server, allowing the hacker to do whatever they want on the victim's machine. In the video, the hacker demonstrates how they can move or delete files, turn on the audio or video. Imagine that happening on your computer. The video is a little long at 9.5 minutes, and as I said, he does jump around a bit. But it's worth watching and thinking to yourself, a high school kid in North Carolina can do this. Imagine what he could do with a little more practice. So let's see Little Smoky at work.
Okay, today you are going to learn how to make your Trojan virus and make it 100% undetectable. So this is what you do. You first need to download Poison Ivy. Now you go here to poisonivy-rat.com. Then you go to downloads and you download the latest version here. They also have plugins so you can add on to it, such as a Wi-Fi scanner, a remote port scanner, and an optic screen capture so you can see what they're doing. So once you have that, you go into here and you go File, New Client. See, you need a port open, so where you go is you need to go to here and hold on, let me open up a new tab. Type in 192.168.1.1. Default is usually admin and then password 1. So once you get in there, yeah. Mine is like this. I have a Verizon router, so each router is different. But basically what you're looking for is something called port forwarding. And then when you open the port, make sure the destination port is 3460 and the source port is any. You might want to open up both TCP and UDP. I wasn't sure which one to open, so I just opened up both. So yeah, now that you have that, you have your port opened, right? So I have my port open here. So what you do is you go File, New Server, you go Create Profile, let's call it Noob. Go in here and you type in, see, this is where actually no IP comes in handy, so that they cannot trace your IP. So you go here to no IP, you make a server, whatever this is. Oh, hold on. You make So you make the name of whatever you want it to be, like a little smoky, whatever. But I already have one. And then at the end you go here, and I have one. Go in here and see there's mine right there. So once you have that, you go into here and you go type in your address there. This is if you want to connect through a proxy, which is even better if you don't want them to detect you, but let's keep it simple for now. You want it on startup system. Okay, so you want it to something that would, kind of look like it was actually running with Windows. So I do something like this. Melt, of course. Now the file name, I guess you can keep it the same name, but you have to make sure you put that .exe at the end there. Here. Inject into a default browser, of course. This, if you do this, it's more likely to get detected by an antivirus because it would be injecting into a running process. And keyloggers, so you can see what they're typing, where they've been. You can give it an icon. I don't have any icons made right now, so I just keep it simple. So you go, oh, you're gonna need that. Click that a couple times. So you go here, generate into desktop. Let's see. Alright, so the next step of this is to you're gonna need to download a crypter. I'm using a crypter called Obsidian. You can Google that. That one's not that hard to find at all, actually. I have it here somewhere. But Obsidian is a crypter. It costs money to get. I know, but I have the demo version. The demo version just works just as well, but there's only one problem, and that is when they turn on their computer, every time they'll get an error saying that it's copyrighted by Obsidian and they need to afford a license and some crap like that. So what you need to go here, let's go here. I sent one and I told them it was a McAfee update. Let's go McAfee. Now you just go down to here, make this 2048 bits, go to executables, go add, go into here, go into the desktop, click on this, go OK. Now this is the output directory, and I have mine going. Oh, I'll just make it go to my documents. Okay. Now you click on that, exit out of this, and go in here, and this is your Trojan virus. Now, when it is on Obsidian, I do not recommend that you ever launch it on yourself to see if it works. You might want to test it on a friend because it'll be easier to remove it off their computer through Poison Ivy. I can show you what I mean when you have it without Obsidian. This is without Obsidian. You can go in here and you go in here, see it's noob, and you can go uninstall. But when it's encrypted with Obsidian, I've just had horrible experiences. Like, it backed up through the router, affected everyone in the house, and I'm not sure. Like, I think it was because we were all on a local area network or something. I'm not sure what went wrong, but it backed up, and it took a lot to get it back, everybody's computer back to normal. So once they do open it, though, this is what you can do. You can go through their files. This is like what I have in my computer. You can go into their processes, and you can just stop things from running. You can go into see their services, and you can stop things from automatically turning on, such as their antivirus. So when they turn on the computer, the antivirus won't automatically run. So you can remove their drivers. Let's say you don't want their mouse to work anymore. You can uninstall their driver for that, or go in here and like mess around with their screen, turn off their screen. You can look at their installed applications. These are all my installed applications. This is for the console. This is for all the ports that they have open. Relay, I'm not sure exactly what that is. This right here, this is when you automatically save your password to your browser. You know how it asks you, would you like me to remember the password, whatever. This is, whatever. This is all the users on the thing. This is when it's connected to a wireless, but I'm not connected wirelessly. I'm connected to a LAN. Now, keylogger. I'll show you what keylogger does right now. So I go accessories. Let's say I go into Notepad. I type hello world. World. I exit out of that now. Now when I go refresh, it'll say I went to Notepad. I didn't even save it. And I typed hello, then I entered, then I went back up in backspace and the D to finish it. I can audio capture. So this is my device I'm using to talk to you guys right now. And I can record the person on the other side, and I can hear everything that's going on. This is screen capture, so I can see the person's screen. This is webcam, so if they have a webcam, I can see them. I don't have a webcam, so it's not going to work for me. And yeah, and if you ever want to upload anything, you can just go into the files here and you go, let's see, where is it? Oh, yeah, that's right. You have to go into something else. Like, yeah, I don't know. You just drag and drop it. You'll figure it out. Whatever. Just mess around with it. You'll get used to it, and you can find out anything and tear apart their system. If, let's say, you want to find a Steam account, there you go. It pretty much gives it to you. So that's it. That's my tutorial. Thanks. Bye.
Are you scared yet? I like to show this cartoon because it really shows that even if you think things are bad, they can definitely be worse. If there are flaws in the operating system you're running on your computer, then it doesn't matter how much work you do putting defenses in place, because the operating system is running your applications. And if the operating system can be hacked, then access into your computer is easy. So keep your operating system up to date. Of course, the software the operating system is running will have their own set of flaws. A race condition is when a shared item of data is accessed by two or more processes at the same time. Think of it like two people trying to buy the last item in stock. In a worst case scenario, the process for checking a valid credit card will verify one purchase but not the other, allow someone to bind the item with an invalid credit card. A buffer overflow used to be a common form of attack and involved entering data that is too long for a variable. And if you do it just right, this will overwrite another part of the code and make the program do something it shouldn't. The Morris worm used this trick. Race conditions are extremely difficult to test for, but it's possible to write scripts to bombard a website until it hits at just the right time. Buffer overflows, on the other hand, are easily avoided by checking the size of all data inputs. The last two problems are very specific to websites. Both are a bit like buffer overflows in terms of an input doing more than it's supposed to. In SQL injection, someone adds extra commands to a URL. In cross-site scripting, someone adds code to a text submission. Let me give you some examples. SQL stands for Structured Query Language and is the means by which we extract data from a database. If you haven't studied database, just think of them as sophisticated spreadsheets, with each worksheet containing a table of data with field names like order number, description, and so on at the top as column headers. If we have a website that allows the user to browse the items we have in stock, if the user clicks on an image of a pair of shoes, we may return the following URL to our website. wearestore.com. The pair of shoes the user clicked on has the item ID 999. And what should happen is this information processed by our server returns the page relating to that pair of shoes, item 999, with maybe a set of pictures, different sizes, and the price and so on. But notice the hacker has added or 1 equals 1 to the end of the URL. What difference will that extra or 1 equal 1 make? Quite a bit, it turns out, because the SQL statement that is executed will select the item name and item description from the item table where the item ID equals 999. That's what's supposed to happen. By adding the extra or 1 equals 1, however, the SQL statement now says where item ID equals 999 or 1 equals 1. Well, 1 equals 1 is true, so the SQL will return all records from the item table. The hacker will see our entire database of items. And it can get worse. What if the hacker adds a database command such as drop table users? This command will delete the table users. If our server accepts the command, we have a request to display item ID and delete the users table. Using this technique, it's also possible to hack user accounts. How can we stop this catastrophic result? Well, we should always check the URL being returned. If the URL gives item ID and nothing more, we program our database to ignore everything after the $item ID equals. And there are also programming methods that treat everything returned as literal strings that cannot be executed as commands. For instance, these two examples would fail because there is no item with the item ID that is literally 999 or 1 equals 1, or 999 semicolon drop table users. It just doesn't exist. But we have to be careful to watch out for these types of exploit and protect our database. Cross-site scripting is another type of injection attack, this time adding code to what should be just a comment or post to a website. Our website has been set up to display these posts using HTML that may look like this. These are print statements because that's how our server creates the web page to be sent to the user. In this case, we have the HTML tag followed by the title, most recent comment, that will be the header for our comments page, followed by a request to retrieve the stored comments from our database, followed by an end HTML tag that ends the HTML code for the page. When we receive comments, we expect them to be just text entries like, I like this, that, etc. But what if the comment contains JavaScript code like this? Between the script tags is JavaScript that tells the server to change location to evil.com and report the cookie file of the user that opened the page. A cookie is a text file that is used by websites to do many things, but one thing it can do is define a valid account that has been used to access this site. So if the website being hacked requires a user account, the script will steal the cookie being used by whomever is viewing the comments page. If that's as clear as mud, let me show you a representation of the hack in action. Here we have our attacker in the top left, the vulnerable website on the right, and the innocent victim at the bottom. First, the hacker accesses the website and posts their comment with the script embedded. The server does what it's supposed to and stores this comment in the database. The victim then comes along and wants to view the comments section. A GET request is sent to the website, which then does what it's supposed to do, creating the page, which includes running a request to fetch all the comments from the database. The page is delivered to the victim, which then displays the page in their web browser. As part of that display, however, the browser reads the command to switch location to evil.com and report the cookie information of the victim. This redirects the user to the attacker's server, evil.com, which may look just like the real website, but is designed to steal all the user's information, from the cookie to whatever information the victim can now be persuaded to enter into the system. For instance, the attacker might have a pop-up that says, 1 day only, 90% off subscriptions. Just enter your bank account details here. The user may do so, thinking they are still viewing the legitimate website, but they have crossed over to evil.com without even knowing. What can we do about this? Well, the website could do better at filtering user comments so no script tags are allowed, or they are stored as literal strings so the script appears in the comment as a comment, not a HTML command. Or the victim could set the security settings on their browser to block all JavaScript. Many websites use some form of scripting, however, to display animation and so on, so this option will work, but at a cost. The real solution begins with the website, doing their job of protecting their customers. But when you access a website, you must trust that they are looking after your security. Some of them may not. You might be starting to think that the best place to embed security is in the design of the system itself, so these types of attacks cannot happen. And you'd be right. Cybersecurity is often an issue in the development of new applications, and the issue has been known since networking began. One of the most famous models of how to deal with security is the Bell-LaPadula model, developed just a few years after ARPANET went live. They developed a set of mathematically verifiable rules for controlling access to data based on the principle of confidentiality. By mathematically verifiable, we mean they are clear enough to be programmed into code. This is how it works. Imagine we have a different classification of users, from president to diplomat to the general public. We have objects that require different levels of confidentiality, such as government files that are rated as top secret, classified, down to unclassified. The question is, who has access to which files? Let's take the middle level and assume the diplomat has clearance at level 2, classified. What files can the diplomat read? With a level 2 clearance, it follows the diplomat cannot read top secret documents. Can read documents at level 2 and 3, however. In terms of writing, the diplomat might write a memo about an impending assassination attempt on a foreign leader, which could be classified as top secret, so the diplomat would not be able to read or talk about their own memo. But they could read and write things at level 2. However, the diplomat should not write something that is published in the public domain unless the material is declassified, for fear of releasing information that should not be given to the public. This leads us to the Bell-LaPadula mantra of no read up, no write down. In other words, to ensure confidentiality of data, the system cannot read information at a higher level and cannot release information to a lower level. So what does that mean in practice? Well, let's apply the requirement of no read up, no write down to an order processing system. Here's Dave on the left. He is an order processing clerk that takes orders over the phone from customers. Order processing requires access to 3 systems on the right, which includes the financial database, which is classified as top secret, because there are laws governing the storage of financial data. Also the order details database that stores records of customer orders, which is classified. And finally the product database, which is public and can be accessed by anyone over the internet. As Dave takes an order, he has the ability to open a new record in the order details database, because they are classed the same. He cannot write anything to the product details database, and nor should he, because the data he is collecting is customer information, and we don't want that to be accidentally written to a public-facing database. He may take the customer's credit card details, which is stored in a database with a higher classification. But that's okay, as long as he writes it once and then no longer has access to that information. This is called a blind write. Once the order details are entered, the systems that process the order must also follow the no read up, no write down principle. For instance, we must block any request from the product details system to access order details. There is no reason why details of who ordered an item should be displayed alongside the item description. That's simply not allowed. For the same reason, the order details system should not be allowed to access financial data, because the financial data needs to be protected at a higher level than the details of a customer order. But if everything is blocked, how do we process the order? Well, notice that we can't read up, but we can read down. So the financial system must be the one that creates the invoice that includes credit card details, order details, and product details. And the order details system must be the one that creates the purchase order, because it has access to the order details and the product details. If you check the arrows, where the dotted arrow is something that must be blocked, we are abiding by the principle of no read up and no write down, but we can still input the required customer order, and we can still generate the business records that are required, such as an invoice or purchase order. Following Bell-LaPadula, this is how we must design our systems to guarantee the confidentiality of data. But even if we have well-designed systems, we still need to define the user, such as assigning Dave the right to access this system or that system. We do this by assigning Dave as a type of user, in this case an order processing clerk, with certain access control and read-write permissions. When Dave logs in with his username and password, these rights are automatically granted. But there we have our next problem. If a hacker manages to steal Dave's credentials, the username and password, the hacker has the same level of rights as Dave and can view all the data that Dave can see. The key here is the strength of the password. Unless Dave gives away the password through a phishing attack or social engineering, the stronger the password, the less likely someone will be able to hack into Dave's account. That's why we have policies that govern the number of characters in a password or the number of days before it must be renewed. The standard is that passwords are at least 8 characters long, using letters, numbers, and symbols. A good way to develop a strong password is to think of something familiar, such as a nickname, place, or something you know well, and then have rules that change the characters, such as replacing every A with an ampersand and so on. If you've ever wondered whether your password is vulnerable, you can go to a website called haveibeenpwned.com. Enter your current password and see if it exists within known hacker dictionaries. If it does, change your password immediately. Given the power of modern computers, passwords can be hacked by trying different combinations of characters until the computer hits on the right one. This is called a brute force attack. How long it takes to crack the password depends very much on the range of characters used, A, and the length of the password, N. The search space T, which represents the number of possible combinations based on A and N, is then given as T equals A to the power N. If we use a standard 8-character password with lowercase and uppercase letters and numbers, we get 62 possible characters, 26 lower, 26 uppercase, and 10 digits, to the power 8, because we have 8 characters in the password. This gives us a search space of 218 trillion possibilities. Using a computer that can test 1 million attempts a second, which is relatively slow, it would take 6.9 years to try all possible combinations and guarantee a hit on the right password. In practice, however, it takes half that time, and it could be down to 1/10 if common words are used, which means your 8-character password has a real-world lifespan of just 18 weeks. How many of you have passwords older than that? And remember, if you use the same password for multiple accounts, if one account is hacked, all your accounts are at risk. But if you think of passwords as words, you've got it all wrong. The best way to come up with a strong password is to think of a phrase, such as, I am a Baruch student. To see what I mean, let's see John Oliver from Last Week Tonight interview Edward Snowden, currently in hiding in Moscow. To find out why Snowden is hiding, Google his name. So let's watch the video.
Why are passwords so important? Or why is it important that we have better ones than the ones that we do have? Because the ones that we do have are embarrassingly bad.
Bad passwords are one of the easiest ways to compromise a system. For somebody who has a very common 8-character password, it can literally take less than a second for a computer to go through the possibilities and pull that password out.
For an 8-character password?
Right.
My password is 5 characters. That's not a joke. That's bad, right?
That's really bad.
Okay, so which of these seem like good options? Password, but spelt W-E-R-D.
This is a joke, right?
No, yes.
That would be within normal password dictionaries, permutations of common words.
But it's misspelt though, so that was the kind of tripwire on it.
Right, it's still 8 characters, even if it's not within your password dictionary, which would mean it would be fairly trivial.
Okay. It's a bad one. That's why I got some more. 1, 2, 3, 4, but spelt out.
That's not going to help you.
Okay. Limp Bizkit Forever with Limp Bizkit spelled properly, but forever not.
That's also not going to help you.
Okay. Really?
I think the best advice here is to shift your thinking from passwords to passphrases. Think about a common phrase that works for you that's too long to brute force and also make them unlikely to be in the dictionary.
Admiral Alonso Ghost Penis 420 YOLO.
That's pretty good.
Right?
It's memorable too.
Right, it's memorable. It's got all the other things you like characters and numbers. YOLO capital letters, obviously. I shouldn't say, now I can't use it.
It can actually be a lot harder to remember a password that they tell you has to be 13 characters long or something like that. It has to have exclamation points, it has to have numbers, it has to have uppercase and lowercase letters and things like that, than it is to remember a simple phrase like Margaret Thatcher is 110% sexy.
Wow, that is a password that not even a computer would guess. Now you're right, okay, I get it, I get how important it is, I fully understand that. The problem is, I'm not going to do it because it seems hard, even though I know it isn't.
You're killing me.
Sorry.
But remember, we don't want to be business blockers, locking things down so tight it confuses the user and creates business problems. If we insist on passwords being changed regularly, we must take into account that users will sometimes forget their password. So we need a password recovery process. This process itself can create problems, especially if the means of recovering the password uses data that is publicly available. For instance, Sarah Palin's Yahoo email account was hacked during the 2008 presidential campaign by a University of Tennessee student, because the reset questions were things like date of birth, zip code, and where she met her spouse, which, given she's a public figure, were readily available online. If we try and be more sophisticated, such as requiring a backup email where the password reset link is sent, we can still have problems, because our password recovery process, and therefore the strength of our cybersecurity, is now dependent on the security policies of that backup email. And if their policies are flawed, we are at risk. Take this example based on a real case. We have a Gmail account a hacker is trying to break into. The hacker clicks on the password reset button that sends the recovery link to the backup email. Maybe through social engineering or just observing online posts, the hacker knows this person has another email account at me.com and guesses this is where the recovery link has been sent. Clicking on the reset button at me.com generates a demand for the address of the person, which can be easily looked up, and the last 4 digits of their credit card, which the hacker doesn't have. However, the hacker also guesses the victim has an Amazon account, and it used to be true that Amazon would accept the addition of a new credit card by username without logging into the account. Guessing the username, the hacker adds a fake credit card. Now when the hacker resets the password on the Amazon account, a credit card number is required. The hacker knows one, so enters the fake number previously added. The account opens, the hacker can delete the fake credit card to cover their tracks, but can now see the legitimate cards used by the victim. That information is what allows the hacker to break into the Gmail account, because now we have the missing 4 digits needed to reset the password of the me.com account, which allows the hacker to reset the password, access the Gmail recovery link, and so reset the password and access the Gmail account of the victim. This shows not only the different methods of resetting a password, from a recovery link to requiring public or supposedly private information, but also if we are connected to outside organizations like Gmail, our cybersecurity policies are dependent on our partners, having policies that are as strong as ours. If not, as we can see, these policies are all chained together, and one flaw brings the whole process down. If you have any questions, let me know.